All right. So, hello, everyone, and welcome. We're so glad you can join us today. This public webinar is being recorded and is part of Cientifico Latino's ongoing effort to provide valuable learning experiences to the broader PhD-bound community and connect you with experts who are passionate about sharing their knowledge. Today's workshop promises to be an engaging and practical session designed to give you tools that you can take with you beyond this hour. We ask that you please write your questions in the Q&A section, and we'll do our best to address these questions at the end, time permitting. And with that, I'd like to welcome our amazing workshop facilitators as they prepare to overview the graduate school application process. How should you determine which programs to apply to, and what do you need to know? Yaniris Molina-Aponte is a third-year PhD candidate in immunology at Harvard Medical School. In the Zahn lab, she is currently investigating immune surveillance mechanisms of T and NK cells and melanoma initiation. She is passionate about mentorship, scientific communication, STEM outreach, and community engagement. Natalie S. Byrd is a first-year PhD student in the developmental psychology department at the Pennsylvania State University. She graduated as a first-generation student with a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from St. John Fisher University in May and applied to graduate school in one cycle. Her research interests are broadly adversity and interpersonal relationships and loneliness. Okay, Yaniris and Natalie, please take it away.
Natalie, I think you can start if you don't mind sharing, because I think the first slide is yours. Yeah, then I can go.
Sure. All right. So I was already briefly introduced, but to overview myself again, I'm currently a first-year student in the developmental psychology department at Penn State University. I graduated first gen from St. John Fisher University, which is a small school up in Rochester, New York. I graduated this May with my Bachelor of Science in Psychology. In undergrad, I had a few research experiences coming into the application cycle. So I was a part-time research assistant for two different professors at my undergrad university, as well as a research intern on a NIH-funded study at the University of Rochester. And then I also did independent research as well. I applied to graduate school once, straight from undergrad, and I ended up getting 4 interviews and 2 acceptances, and I also did not take the GRE.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Yaniris. I go by Yani. Excited to be here today to talk to you. And then just briefly, just a little bit more about myself. As you've heard, I'm a third-year PhD candidate in immunology program at Harvard University. I'm also a member of the Harvard Leader Human Biology and Translational Medicine program and an NSF-GRFP fellow. After I graduated from undergrad at the University of Puerto Rico, Macau, I worked for 2.5 years as a tech and lab manager at Johns Hopkins. And previous to applying, I had a REU experience in college, professional development program, and 4 years of undergrad research at my home institution. And for my grad school application, I just took the TOEFL. If anyone has questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them. And I also did not have to take the grade. And so one thing that we're going to start today in this workshop is very basic, right? So what is a PhD program in science? And to address this, I think one of the first things that we need to highlight, because this is different across different countries, but is that a PhD is completely free, right? Your department will cover your tuition costs, your health insurance, and would also, on top of that, provide you with a stipend. And I think one of the most important things about doing a PhD, and this is really, really key, is the independence that you can gain, right? You will learn how to become a completely independent scientist. And even if you've done previous research before going into your PhD, you would see that it's very different and that you will be able to execute your own experiments and make your own designs. And so you will gather all those techniques and skills as you start on this journey. And again, one thing that's really interesting is that you gain expertise here. The goal is basically that you'll become an expert in a very, very niche topic in your research area, and that your work will add some kind of novelty or relevance to your field. And another thing that's really, really important, and this depends a lot on what kind of PhD program you're applying to, but you'll develop so many different skills. Some of them are more technical and others are more just personal. You will develop critical thinking skills. You will learn how to time and project manage yourself. You will learn about networking, writing, teaching, and communication skills. And oftentimes you will be learning all these things at the same time. And it's just a really rewarding experience. And then lastly, and I think this is really, really key nowadays as people navigate a little bit outside of academia in the industry, consulting, and many other paths, is that the skills that you learn during your PhD will set you up for success in multiple career paths. And even if you're starting your PhD with an idea, so often people change throughout their journey and find something that they're really passionate about. And, it's really not that bad because the skills that you develop allow you to pivot at any time. So you can pursue multiple paths, including academia, industry, government, consulting, science policy, science communication, among many, many others.
Great. Any questions so far? Good.
So the questions, we're gonna write them into the Q&A section and we'll address them at the end.
Sounds good. All right. So next we'll go over the basic timeline for submitting grad school applications. So right now through starting September very soon is a great place to start. So first thing, you're going to want to start preparing for the GREs if you are taking them. A lot of schools are still optional or not required, but some schools do require them. So look up available test dates and testing centers, or you can take it online as well. To know, October is the latest you can take the test to submit scores for PhD applications. And you're also going to want to begin studying 2 to 3 months before the exam. So pretty much right now, if you are taking it. Your local library should have a lot of GRE prep materials, but there are also a lot of free materials online. Online workshops such as Magoosh, or other GRE preparation courses. There's also a lot of practice tests on the GRE website. There's also a program called ETS, which allows you to take the GRE at home if you so choose. Just to note, there are some software and room considerations if you choose to go that route. You can take the GRE 5 times within 1 year, but it is expensive, so it's $220 to take it. And to send updated scores to each individual school is $35. So if the GRE is optional for schools, consider not taking it because it can add up very quickly. Some general tips are just get a good night's rest before the test, bring a snack and water, get to the testing site, or make sure that your online area is good before you get going. And also GRE scores are valid for 5 years after you take them. So if you decide to not apply the cycle, they are still good for the future. In September is also a good time to make a list for PhD programs you're interested in applying to. Make sure when you're making the list, you're also noting specific deadlines to each school, such as their personal statement or diversity statement prompts, or if they're required, GRE requirement, any course requirements. This is especially notable for people that are applying to a PhD outside of their major and undergrad. How many letters of recommendations, where to submit these, and then CV and transcript requirements. Also look about potential application fee waivers. We'll talk more about this later. But there also is a no fee application list. This is mainly for domestic students. Some schools do not require a fee. And September is also a great time to be writing your personal statement. August and September should be when you're starting to draft this, and you will be revising up until November, December, when it's time to submit. September is also a great time to start asking for strong letters of recommendation. So you're going to want to ask research or general mentors that have seen you grow as a professional and a person. It's not great to ask a professor who does not know you well. This is a great time for you to stand out. And we'll talk about more of this later as well. In October, that's a great time to apply for external fellowships. So Cientifico Latino has a list on their website, but one example is the NSF-GRFP, which last year undergrads or senior undergrads are allowed to apply to. It's also a great time to have professors and colleagues look over your personal statements. I always heard the more eyes on your application, the better. So if you have a professor you trust or your mentor, make sure you're asking them and going through revisions with them. It's also a good time to remind your letter writers about the letters of recommendation. It's great to send them either a document or Excel sheet that lists each school you're applying to, what the program is, what their deadline is, and where to submit the letter. It just helps if you're organized, then it makes them organized as well. It's also a good time to attend any science and professional development conferences if possible. Not only is this a great experience as a scientist, but some of them also give application fee waivers for certain schools. Also, if you're applying to programs in especially ecology, evolution and biology, computer science, or psychology, in October or late September, you're going to want to start contacting professors you're interested in working with via email. This is not applicable to every field, but for the most part for these, you're going to want to email them to introduce yourself, your research interests, how you think your research interests match with them. And usually you want to ask, if their lab's accepting students, if that's not already posted on their lab website or the university website, or ask them another question. One thing that's been up for debate recently is if you should ask for a preliminary Zoom meeting before you apply. But I've heard recently that it's not great to ask because professors are so busy. So try to refrain from asking from that. But also, if you do not get a response back to this email, it is not personal. These professors are very busy, and some just have a blanket equity process where they just don't apply, they don't respond to anyone to make it fair that way as well. In November and December, you're going to want to give a final reminder to your mentors about those strong letters of recommendation. Again, those are very important. Any final edits to your personal statement, emailing programs about application fee waivers, submitting your applications, preferably a week before the deadline, just so you feel comfortable in case anything arises. And to note, most start early December, usually December 1st, some are December 15th, but usually December 1st. So after submitting your applications, notifications for PhD programs are usually between December and February. You should hear back by the end of February about an interview, but preliminary interviews, which are mainly just quick Zoom calls, may start as early as December after submitting applications. If you don't hear back by February, you may be waitlisted or not accepted. And in this case, it's great to start considering a prep or a post-bac. A grad school interview is not an acceptance, but schools only invite candidates they are very interested in accepting since they've limited spots to pay for accommodation. So if you do get an interview, this is something to celebrate about and to be proud about. And for international students, you might have a Skype or phone interview before an in-person interview is sent. For non-biology programs, they may notify you of an acceptance via email and then have visiting weekends after you're accepted for you to get to know the school. There are recruitment weekends for biological biomedical programs. These usually are in January through March. Non-biology are usually in January through early April. These are opportunities to learn more about the program, interview with faculty members, interact with the grad students in the area, as well as just tour the campus and city to see if that would be a good fit for you, because that is important sometimes. And PhD program acceptance offers for STEM usually is between February and April. Your offer will include information about your monthly stipend, any benefits like health insurance, and then sometimes they throw in a move-in stipend as well, so just like startup funds. And PhD program decisions are due April 15th. So by April 15th, you are going to want to accept a PhD offer and kindly decline other programs you're not interested in. Around this time is also great to remember to thank everyone that helped you get to this moment, family, your letter writers, and even your mentors. So that was a lot of timelines. So this is kind of just a cheat sheet of where you should be at each stage. So summer, planning tests, looking at funding, finalizing your schools, drafting your statements. In the fall, you're going to finalizing your tests, reviewing your applications a lot, attending information sessions. The winter, that is time to submit your application. Look at other financial aids, like I mentioned, fellowships. That's a great time to apply to those, as well as interviews may start in the winter. And in the spring, that's when admissions happen, decisions happen, that's when the thank yous happen. So spring can be a very exciting time. And because there are so many moving parts to applying to a PhD program, using the application tracker like this one can be very helpful to just kind of keep track of what schools you're applying to, what mentors at each school, what the research they're doing is, what components are required, and what you've submitted so far. So now, what are the components to grad school applications? Mainly, most programs will require an online application, a transcript. This is sometimes official or unofficial, but we'll get into that. A CV, letters of recommendation, and then sometimes they go by a different name, but usually a research or academic statement. Some programs also require a diversity or a personal statement, which talks about your leadership or outreach efforts, demands between academics, any adversity or challenges you've overcome, or any experience relevant to DEI. GREs, again, some are optional, some are not required, some are required, so make sure you check with the specific requirements there. And then some schools want a writing sample from you, so usually this will be a well-written independent or first author manuscript. For the online application, most schools' portals open around August or September, so start checking now if some of them are open. It's suggested to create an account as soon as possible, so you aren't shocked when time comes to submit your application, because sometimes it takes a long time to fill out all their demographic sections, as well as some schools have like extra supplementals in their online application that is not listed on their website. And this is where you'll pay your application fee waiver as well. So again, it ranges from 60 to 105 per school. But there are a lot of avenues you can get this waived. So participation in GSMI, specific conferences, having veteran status, being first gen, financial need, attending their recruitment days, or even just emailing the program director to request one. For transcripts, each grad program will likely ask you to supply a certified copy of your transcripts from all undergrad or graduate schools you've attended. This even includes institutions that you have completed some coursework from, like transferred from, or took credit during high school. A transcript generally lists all the courses you've taken, the grades you've received, and then your final GPA. To note, some schools require unofficial transcripts, so you just upload a PDF, while some require an official transcript, so you have to go through your institution or parchment and request to be sent to that university. Sometimes this requires a small fee, but just make sure you pay attention to if the school is requesting an unofficial or official transcript. As for your CV, I believe there will be more workshops in the future. But a general overview of the CV is making sure things that you've done. So education, research experience, publications, posters, grants, teaching, leadership, work. Make sure all of that good stuff is on there. Letters of recommendation, these are very important as they have an opportunity to set you apart, as well as letter writers can also address any limitations to your application, such as a low GPA or leave of absence, and kind of explain why or how you've overcome that. Make sure you alert your letter writers well in advance, so at least 2 weeks to a month. And make sure you provide your letter writers with a list of schools and deadlines, a copy of your CV, and instruct each writer to discuss different topics. So you don't want all 3 of your letter writers to discuss the same research experience. I personally instructed my letter writers to one talk about teaching, and the other one talked about my academics. So all 3 complemented each other, but did not repeat each other. Typically 3 are required here, so make sure you have 3 people in mind. And on the right here, you'll see just a basic template for asking professors for letter recommendation. This can be through email, but also it's great to do this in person. For the research/academic statement, programs will phrase this question slightly differently. You tailor your statement slightly for each program. Generally, the prompt is communicating your motivation for pursuing this degree, your academic and research background, as well as your career goals, and the specific area in which you'd like to study, and what professor is most aligned with that. You will be evaluated on your writing ability, your background, your goals, reasons, degree, maturity, and uniqueness. Make sure in the statement you're telling a story. Make sure your experiences are. They want to see what you did. What did you learn from what you did? What then led you to the next experience? What were you still curious about? How do all these connect to you now? You do not want to repeat your CV because they have a copy of that CV. You have a very limited word count. Sometimes it's 1,000 words, sometimes it's 2 pages max. But you want to make sure you're making good use of this limited word count in this academic statement and your CV. Also avoid the kisses of death. This is a study that's really popular in psychology, at least, but this includes inappropriate references, jokes, spelling or grammar errors, unpersonalized materials, and more. This research statement stuff, this will be in a further workshop, but some brief do's and don'ts for the personal statement. Do your homework on the mentor in the program, specifically show why your research interests match and why that program. Do not be vague. They want to see why specifically them. Make sure you proofread, no grammar errors, no spelling errors. Have as many eyes on your application as possible. Sometimes you'll miss things or not think of things. This is always helpful. Make sure you follow each program specific instructions on what they're asking for, as well as their word count. Like I said, some are just 1,000, some are 2 pages. So make sure you follow that. Ensure the university and program names are correct. A lot of leaders at universities have shared that this happens more than you think. And make sure you start with a unique hook to put yourself apart. And for some don'ts, don't disclose anything you're not comfortable with a committee seeing about you. For example, mental health, trauma, any negatives. Don't be nonspecific or not have any research goals. Don't be excessively altruistic or have cliches like, I just want to help people with my PhD. No inappropriateness, no jokes, irrelevant details, or blaming others for any negatives in your application. Like I mentioned before, don't just list your resume or CV. Use the limited word space wisely. So kind of explain everything they see on your CV, what led you there, what you learned, what happened next. Don't handwrite your application. Please type it and turn it in. And don't turn in your first draft. Make sure you are proofreading, you are editing, and revising. How many PhD programs should you apply for? Apply for as many as you'd like to be a part of. Check the program website, look at the faculty and their research, see what matches with your interests. It's also helpful to talk to the current students, so either recent or upper year grad students. You can always email them and say, hey, I'm interested in working with your advisor. What is your experience like? Some will offer to have a little Zoom call. That's always helpful to kind of get their input on how the advisor relationship is, as well as more about what their lab is doing. But mainly compile a list of at least 10 to 12 programs. That's usually a lucky number there to apply to. Make sure they are programs that you would like to join and that the research aligns with your interest. Don't just waste an application fee. And now how to choose a research advisor.
Thank you. Let me see if I can share really quick so that it might be easier. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Okay, everyone can see my screen. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so this is a really important question. And I think one of the biggest reasons why we wanted to touch on a little bit on this in this webinar is that as some people have commented in the questions, there are some programs that actually don't have rotations and you apply directly to a professor or advisor. And so there are a few things here that we're going to discuss that might help you think about who would be a good fit for an advisor. And so in general, this is a critical decision in grad school. I remember one of my own mentors, she said that the most important decision that you're going to make in grad school that can make you or break you, sadly, is who's going to be your advisor. And so these are just some general areas to consider as you make this decision. You want to have an advisor that's supportive, that has a good publication record, that's a good role model, right? Someone that you kind of want to be like, that has strong collaborations, whether that is with people within your university, across the nation, or even internationally. And especially and importantly in this climate, one advisor that champions diversity and inclusion. And so when we talk about an advisor that is supportive, right, what does that look like? It could look very different, but the main idea is that this PI is willing to support your goals during your training, right? And really, really, really key is available when you need them, right? And this is something that when you're starting to decide, what you want in an advisor, I think that even before you ask that question, you need to really ask yourself what kind of mentorship or what kind of support you would need, right? Because if you're the person that sees themselves as someone that's fairly independent, I don't want my PI to on top of me, like I can leave my stuff and maybe get back to them when I need to, then you want kind of like a hands-up PI. But if you're someone that would prefer to have informal chat, that has a PI or advisor that has like an open door policy and you can just come in whenever and have a chat, these are things that are really important and that you need to know before you start thinking about a potential advisor. At the same time, publication record's really key, right? Like for your PhD, you will have some kind of publication based on the work you've done. And so it's good to check that the potential advisors that you're looking at have good publication record and that they can help you out, right, as you develop maybe your first author manuscript. Again, that they're a good role model and that the PI has positive values that you kind of respect. And that they're also, and this is really key, as a lot of people nowadays are entering PhD programs, but they don't necessarily want to stay in academia anymore. You want to have then an advisor at PI that actually supports alternative careers, whatever that might look like. And that not only supports it, but also can connect you and help you network with people along those career paths. And again, that a PI that's really collaborative, right? Like whether this is colleagues in your university, this PI introduces you to other people that might help with your project, foster this collaboration with people within the lab, outside the lab, or even professionally. And lastly, champions diversity and inclusion, right? Like they have a diverse lab. They understand that, different students come from different backgrounds and they account for that in their spaces. They make sure that everyone feels seen and supported and that, they're aware of who you are and how can they better support you. And I think this, again, probably of all the things that I've mentioned so far, this is probably one of the most important ones in view of everything that's happening. And these are things that you should definitely consider. And as you meet people, whether this is to set up rotations or to finalize who's going to be your PI, keep that in mind as you navigate that. And so one thing that I wanted to do, this story, it's based on an actual real thing that happened. So obviously the names have been changed, and a lot of the story a little bit tweaked, but in its core, it's a real story, right? And so this is just a case study to get you guys thinking about what we just talked about. And in this case study, we have someone as a prospective PhD student that's searching for a supportive research lab, right? So we have this girl, her name's Isabel Orbelli, and she identifies as a minority student in STEM, and she's currently applying to PhD programs in biomedical sciences. And her goal is to have a career in academia, become a PI. And because of that, she recognizes the importance of actually having a good support PI and a lab that would be a really good fit for her. So when she's interviewing, she has this really fantastic interaction with a PI, and she feels like she connected with this PI and that the PI was kind. However, she decided to reach out to Korean grad students and students who rotated in the lab but didn't really join, to just gather more information other than this first interaction that she had with the PI. And so when she contacts a grad student who rotated in the lab, she says, "Hi, Raquel, I hope you're doing well. I remember you rotated in X lab, and I was wondering if you could share a bit about your experience. I had a great interaction with this PI, and I was considering the lab," which Raquel responds, "Yes, for sure." And then she says, "It was my least favorite rotation." So then that's not great, right? And then this person just laughs and says, "I'm dead." And then Raquel goes on to say, "I can write a text summary, or maybe we should meet in person in the next few days." And so the second part of the text, right, that maybe we should meet in person in the next few days is a massive red flag, right? Because it means that probably this person doesn't feel comfortable talking about her experience, via text, and wants to meet with you over coffee or maybe lunch or whatever to talk, more freely, and to tell you maybe things that she wouldn't really tell you by text. And so, as you think about what we talked about, and also this case study scenario, there are some key reminders again when you're selecting your research advisor. Keep in mind the advisor style, whether it's, independent, non-independent, hands-on, hands-off, and their expectations. And even when you're thinking about rotating in a space, right, if you're in a rotational program, you can have a meeting and ask these questions, right? Like, what are the expectations for graduate students that rotate in this lab, so that you can know ahead of time and make the best decision for you if you actually end up rotating in that lab or not. Think about the research fit, right? And potential projects that you could be doing, even if it's just a rotation. And as maybe you've rotated, but now you're really thinking about if you should join this lab. Think about, I'm really interested in X and Y. Can I do that in this lab? How independent are students to actually choose a project, or are students just hand out a project, right? And see how could fit in that space. Think about funding and the obligations that you would have. And I think particularly, again, in this climate, the funding is really key. Definitely ask really early, what does it look like? Even if are you taking rotation students, even if you're taking rotation students, can you actually, have them in your lab? Could you pay them for the next 3, 5 years? What's the security for funding? Like, those are really important questions that you need to know, because ultimately for most programs, when you join at the beginning, maybe your first or second year, your program will pay for you. But after that time you join a lab, is actually the lab that's going to pay for you. So you need to know this ahead of time. And then think about, the student research advisor pay talk about, like I just said, grad students are in the lab, postdocs are in the lab, senior staff that's in the lab, techs are in the lab, people that rotated in the lab but didn't join, people that recently left the lab, like alumni, like have all these meetings, particularly for labs that you're really interested in, whether this is a lab that you're thinking about rotating or joining, because this information is going to be really important for you as you decide if the space is a good fit for you and if it aligns with the goals that you have for your PhD and after. And then ask for opportunity for co-advising. I think a lot of people are interested in multiple things, and maybe you like two PIs a lot, and you're thinking, well, if they, like each other and they've collaborated, they hypothetically can become my co-advisors, but not all PIs actually do that. So if you're interested in that, just have that conversation early and see if it's a possibility. And lastly, and really, really important, think about the lab culture and the environment. I think as you navigate your first, your second year, and you finish your classes, you are going to be all the time in your lab, right? So you want to be in a space where you feel comfortable, when you feel like you can speak up, where you feel like you can be yourself, and most importantly, a space where you're going to be supported. And I think that, it's tricky because the labs, and this is something that people have talked to me about, and it's true, labs are constantly changing, whether it's because people are leaving and joining, and you can only gauge, I guess, the lab culture as you're there, maybe in your rotation or early as you join, and that can change. But even with that in mind, I think most of the time you would notice that the lab culture is actually set up by the PI. So you can, even if people come and go, I think you can really see a hint of what the lab culture is when you have conversations with your PI, and and you ask, what does the lab do, socially, how are people supported, and so on, and you can get a better idea. And so one last thing that we really wanted to highlight, right, is that, and we want to emphasize that this is a particular, difficult time in academia, and that in the last 2 years, applying to grad school in general, particularly PhD program, has become, really difficult. There's a lot of funding crisis going on. And we wanted to acknowledge that. And so we've talked to some people. I particularly talked to some people in my program and asked for advice, the faculty, anything new, anything that would be important for you guys to know. And one of the biggest things that I kept hearing was that, the expectation for this application cycle is that you will have a smaller class size. So hypothetically, half or so of last year class, because again, the funding situation. There's also conversation about some programs not even opening for applications. So I would say definitely keep in touch with the schools that you're considering that you want to apply and double check that they're opening for applications this year so that you don't, waste your time. And then one thing that you can do right now, you can contact program directors or people in the administration, program administrators, and so on to ask about financial support, thinking about, the conditions right now and just making sure that you will be supported during your training. And you can also, again, apply very broadly, connect with potential advisors early, use your network for you. Talk to people that know someone and ask them to put you in contact with them. And that way you're ready to start interacting with people within that institution. And lastly, if you receive an offer, let them know your answer as soon as possible. Because something that happened a lot in the last cycle was the people, it's usually maybe you're interested in between two schools, you're still trying to decide. But if you take a long time, what happened last year was that some schools actually rescinded their applications and only accepted the people that actually said yes really quickly. And then that was the class, right? So during this cycle, if you get an offer and you're really considering that school, definitely let them know as soon as you can. And so thank you so much for being here, participating, asking questions. You can check out our website for additional support for grad school. And now we're going to open it for questions if you have any questions. Thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Yanni and Natalie. We do have several questions in the Q&A, although many that came in we answered textually. We do want to get some of these answered live. So the first one, if a program does not ask for a writing sample, would it still be appropriate to include your first author manuscript as a supplemental material to your application, or simply include the citation in your CV?
Yeah, I mean, definitely have the citation in your CV that should be there. If there's an option to upload supplementary material, I would totally just to show them, right? Like it definitely won't hurt you to have it there. But yeah, definitely a must in your CV. It should be there.
We have one of these tough ones, tough situation here. What could I do if one of my mentors who could make my application stronger is unfortunately not a trustworthy person? How could I ask them to give me a recommendation letter?
I would say I had a similar experience. One of my letter recommendation writers was, I don't know if you mean trustworthy in the sense of you didn't know if they would get it in on time, but I had that experience, and it just helps to just be proactive, really advocate for yourself. That's a great skill to go into a PhD with, anyways, being able to advocate for yourself. So just regularly reminding them, sending them emails or in person, that sort of thing.
And I would just add in if you think they're untrustworthy in the way that you're not sure if they'll actually say nice things about you, which does happen, unfortunately. It may not be the best idea to have them, to ask them for a rec letter. Maybe there's somebody else that you worked with in the lab that could write you a letter of recommendation, or um, even in worst case scenario that you're almost certain that they're not going to write you a good letter and there's nobody else there. You may have you may want to opt to just get a letter from your professor rather than, this research mentor if you absolutely know that they're gonna bomb the application for you by sending a mean, recommendation letter, or something that's just very basic and not thoughtful. That's not going to help you. Um, and so maybe you want to consider going to a professor or somebody else. Okay, in the personal statement, is it better to highlight the key takeaways and lessons from our research experiences while leaving the more detailed descriptions of the work itself for the research statement?
Sorry, I can take that. I was trying to find the mute button. Yes, so I think you can definitely do that. I think you can talk about your research experiences in both. Add more details in terms of like maybe what were the challenges and what did you learn and what was the outcome in your research statement one. And then for the personal statement, try to take, I think when I think about the personal statement, I think about, telling a story. And so I think the best personal statements that you often read out there are the personal statements where people talk about their own personal story or something that they're passionate about, and they merge that story with what they've done in research, but giving you like the big picture, right? Because then ultimately, for the nitty-gritty stuff, that's what you have your research statement for.
Given the differences in statements, statement of person, purpose versus personal statement, how would you recommend having mentors review statements?
When I went through the process, my mentors and I focused more on the statement of purpose because that was the one that was required for all the schools, so that was most important. So I would definitely focus on that one. Um, the personal statement is usually shorter. So definitely have that reviewed, but definitely prioritize the statement of purpose.
If you are attending a conference for your field that is well attended by PIs in that field of study, like SFN, Society for Neuroscience, is it appropriate to ask to meet a PI that you have been in correspondence with at this meeting? And if so, how would you frame such a request?
Yeah, that's a good question. Definitely do it. I think honestly, when I think about my own journey, I think things that I would have done, wish I would have done at that time is definitely one of that. I think a lot of times I was really intimidated by the space or what they would think of me and whatever, and I didn't do that. And one thing I realized now in grad school is that, your network is everything. Like, it can help you in many, many ways, whether that is finding a mentor, identifying if school's good for you, if the PI could be a potential advisor. So definitely reach out. And when you reach out, I would say be very intentional and specific, right? Like, these people most of the time don't have a lot of time. They receive 10,000 emails. Like, just be very intentional, even with the subject of your email. If you're emailing, like, be specific about what you want. And then when you write your message, just, be respected, dear whatever doctor, and then introduce yourself a little bit and then ask what you want to ask, whether that is, me, if you've read an interesting paper and you want to discuss it, if you just want to chat about what you saw that they talked about in their talk, whatever it is, just be very specific. And then just send the email. Definitely. I would definitely reach out. I think that's actually great.
Yeah, I heard a lot of applicants doing this. It's always great to network. So if you are attending a conference and see a potential advisor, is definitely reach out.
A question from Caroline. Do I have a better chance of getting into a top PhD program if I do a master's first? Will this disqualify me from NSF-GRFP?
I would say that research experience matters more than a master's. In the US, at least, getting into a PhD program, you don't have to have a master's first, but you certainly can apply with a master's. So I think what they're overall looking for is research experience. And to my knowledge, I don't think that disqualifies you from the NSF-GRFP because you can apply your first or second year of your doctoral degree.
If you work in a lab as a tech and you're applying for the PhD program in the same university, should you mention the current PI as one of your persons that you want to have as your thesis advisor if you are genuinely interested in their work? Does it create a conflict or red flags in the application?
That's a good question. I'm actually not sure. I know of people that have tech in a lab and that have joined them, so I know you can totally do it. In the application, I don't know because this person, if you're working there as a tech, they're probably going to be one of your recommenders too, right? So I don't think it's looked down upon. I just think you have to be very specific about why you would like to join them, maybe emphasize something that was really interesting to you as you tech or something that you've discovered and you want to follow up and then use it to your advantage. But it shouldn't be seen as a negative, actually. I've known people that have joined the labs where they were teched before.
If I did not do independent research as an undergrad or during master's, am I at a disadvantage of applying to a PhD compared to others? Even though I participated in research projects under a PI for over 3 years, I presented at conferences and wrote manuscripts. I mean, it sounds to me like this is maybe coming from a research tech, um, and in which case I'd say it's similar to the previous question that, a research tech has the research experience and, they can apply, for a PhD and be looked at, you know, as equally qualified as somebody that uh, did undergraduate research or even a master's, I would say. Okay, so more questions are rolling in. Um, okay, so one attendee asks, I'm currently in a situation where I feel like I want more research experience before going into a PhD program. Is it better to work as a lab tech or do a prep program for a year or two, or trust that I would get that experience as in a PhD program either way? I think the general, the question here is more about uh, how qualified are you as of right now to be applying into a PhD program, and if you don't have the qualifications, then you might want to get some experience through something like working as a lab tech or doing the prep um, prior to applying. But if you've done undergraduate research, you are in a position to apply. For example, I was in
Yeah.
a position where I was doing research, but I started a little bit late. It was, for me, I was only going to have about a semester worth of research experience and plus a summer experience. Um, but you know, about 6 months, let's call it, of research experience before I would apply in my senior year. And I decided to not apply, but to take an extra year in my bachelor's just to be better, um, to be a better applicant. But I definitely felt like I had the choice, of staying on or not. If you feel like you don't have the choice, like let's say, you have to graduate and you only have a couple of months of research experience under your belt, it's going to be a judgment call for you. Um, so depending on how fruitful your experience was, and maybe what your mentors uh, have to advise you, I think that's going to help you, guide that decision on whether to apply right away or not.
Yeah, I will also just add that I also did work a little bit as a tech before. And I think for me it was just because I knew that I needed a little bit more of research experience because I was actually on a pre-med track and then I changed during college. So that's very common for people that are changing careers and stuff like that in college. But also I think one way that you can make sure that it's not just that you want to get more research experience and that it's mainly like you want to prepare more, or if you could actually apply right away, you can talk to people that are, faculty or that you're comfortable talking to this about and get their feedback. Like just talk to them about what you've done and the experiences that you have and ask, hey, if you're a recruiter, like, and you see my application, do you think that I have a shot? What do you think I should do? And then think about that advice and use it to make a decision as well.
For schools that outrightly state that PhD program is extra competitive for international applicants, how do you address the competition? I guess what they're asking is how do they gauge their qualifications as an international applicant for these kinds of programs?
Yeah, no, it's tricky because I mean it's very program dependent, but I do think that I would say definitely be authentic. I know it sounds really cliche, but honestly, like I think, every person in a PhD program brings a unique perspective, a unique background, and when you really remain authentic to yourself and what you're passionate about, that's gonna literally be seen through your application, through your interview. And people really like love that. They realize that you're being authentic, that you're passionate, that you're curious about the field, that you can interact with the people socially. And these are other things that really, really matter at the time of making a decision of like who gets in and who doesn't.
Okay, in the interest of time, I'm just gonna cut this question in like half because they provided some context that um, they said, "Hello, if I'm close but not exactly at the program's required GPA, is there potential for me to still get admitted?"
Yeah, I think, like I said, the letter of recommendations are a great place to address like a low GPA, especially if there's a reason behind that. As well as if you do come in with a low GPA, even if the GRE is optional, sometimes it's a great idea to take the GRE to kind of help that.
So in one of the application guides that this participant saw, this attendee was looking through, it says that they ask students um, to not list their specific faculty of interest in the application because after candidates are invited for interviews, then they ask them about the faculty of interest. So then they're asking, does this mean that they should not mention the faculty that they're interested in their statement of purpose? Or how do they address this?
Yeah, I guess that's unique. I've never seen that. But I think overall you should always listen to the instructions that each school offers. So if it says don't list specific faculty you'd like to work with, then don't list them in your application. It looks like it wants you to indicate the general area instead. So make sure you just list your research interests and say how they fit with the general area, or maybe multiple faculty, but don't, again, list faculty if they don't ask for it.
Yeah, it's definitely very program specific because my program that's also under DMS, but it's immunology, like it's independent from BBS. It does not ask you to do that. So definitely do that. Read the anything from any application that you're doing and make sure that you follow the rules. Like you can totally get your application disregarded if you don't follow instructions, so don't do it.
So, another GPA kind of question, if you have these poor grades in your undergrad, but you've shown the very strong growth, overall ability to think, and you have published, what's the best way to address it in your application? How much do your letters, do your recommenders need to address this? Should all three write about this, or should only your most recent PI speak on this?
Yeah, this is a great thing to talk about in your personal statement or diversity statement. If your school requires it, that is a great essay. And then, yeah, you can instruct a letter of recommendation writer to write as well. Like I said, you do want your letters of recommendations to be diverse. You don't want all three talking about the same thing. So I'd probably just instruct one to address it too, especially if you've already talked about it in your personal statement.
Yeah, I think we'll get to one or maybe two more questions. So, what quantifies as enough research experience before applying?
That's a really tough question. And I don't think anyone has an answer. Because I
Right.
think every applicant in most schools is going to be revised holistically, which is why your letters of rec and your statements also matter. But I would say definitely have some research experience before applying. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the same field. If it is, okay. If it's not, just mention how you can transfer the skills that you've learned to the new field that you're interested in applying. But I would say just done research enough that even if, and also it doesn't matter if you did research and it didn't work. That's really important. If you've done a project and it didn't pan out and you feel like, oh my God, all I did was just fail, that is actually a legit valid research experience. And it's probably one of the best experiences that you could have because that's probably what your PhD at the beginning would look like a lot. So it is setting you up for exactly what you would see in a PhD. So just important to frame it in a way that you talk about that experience. You mention what you did and what you learned, and even if it didn't work out, you mention what you would have done next to make it work. But yeah, it's a difficult question. I mean, no school is going to tell you specifically how much because it's hard to measure, and also um, it's quality over quantity. So like if you had 3 years of experience, 4 years of experiences, but like they were cut short or like you didn't really learn a lot in like most of them, then it really doesn't matter. But if you have one or two that are really, really good, then that matters more. So do keep those things in mind.
Okay. Um, so we are now at time. So, oh wait, no, we're not. We're going to seven, aren't we? To 7 or 6:30? To seven, right? We just, yeah, no, I'm sorry. We're going to seven. I think we got through the presentation a little faster than I anticipated. Um, so what are some skill sets that I should try to learn on my own time to improve my CV? I think anything related to research is going to be, really nice to brush up on. So, for example, if you don't know how to program, maybe start teaching yourself how to program. Take start a class or buy a book. There's plenty of online resources for this kind of thing. Brush up on things like statistics maybe. And you know, you can write that you have advanced, skills in quantification and quantitative biology or whatever it might be. Um, like these like technical skills, I think are some things that you can very quickly um, start to improve on your own time that will make a big impact in your CV. These
Yeah.
like short term goals.
I was going to add that one piece of advice I got, but especially not everyone's passionate about statistics. So making sure you have a lot of experience there on your CV is helpful. For example, I took a few courses through CenterStat, which they did a few free ones, like structural equation modeling. And so I added that to my CV, and I believe that helped.
I'm a master student applying for this PhD cycle. Am I at a disadvantage for having only worked with one PI throughout my undergraduate and graduate career? Is there anything I should do now to make myself a better candidate, or is it too late and I should postpone my application? So I would say that any
I
research
feel like
experience
so there's
is,
some magic experiences.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah, I
think
just
my cut out there a little
go
bit.
ahead.
If I was, it sounded like I might have been interrupting you because of my internet. It was just frozen, so I
Oh,
didn't
you're
hear anything.
good.
So
Go ahead.
yeah, please continue.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So I was just gonna say that just emphasize the things that you've learned so far, the things that you want to work on, what you're passionate about, and just highlight all of that in your application. And I guess um, I think some schools also like to have people like other people as recommenders. So as long as you have other people, whether those are professors or people that you've worked with that can recommend you, that can help you a lot. Having other letters that it's not only your advisor can help.
If you strongly express your desire to work in certain niches that the department has, given your multiple years of post-bac research experiences, does that sort of alienate out other PIs who don't work on the same niche?
I don't think so, because one of the programs I was interviewing for, there was only one person in the program that did this specific work. So that's fine if there's only one person you want to work at in a university. I mean, sometimes it is helpful to have multiple in mind, especially if you're doing like rotation or you need a second lab. It's okay to just have one you're interested in.
I think this also might be one of those cases where it'll be good to contact the faculty um, because you want to know if if they're going to be accepting students and if they might be interested in taking you on, because if you go to a PhD program where there's only one lab you're interested in, and you get accepted and you join the program, um it could change the situation a lot for you if ultimately you're unable to then join that one lab that you were interested in. How important is the author contribution section on publications? Do professors check that part? I'm just asking because the paper was just published from my lab, but I only work for PCR on that paper.
To be fair, I don't think most people check, to be fair. I mean, some people might, but it's rare. I think if you have a publication, definitely put it there in your CV, talk about it. It's an amazing thing to have. And then, people might ask you, to be fair, I had I really had zero people in any of my interviews ask me about any of my publications. So it really depends, but just be prepared to talk about it, right? If someone were to ask you, like just say how you contributed. Just make sure that you understand obviously the paper and what you contributed to it, and then that's what you need.
We have a question about when will the GSMI scholar applications for fall 2026 open? And that will open in April 2026. So be on the lookout for that. Okay. I received fall 25 PhD admission in a university, and they're considering me for financial support since April. I followed up, but nothing, and classes start by September 3rd. What's your advice here?
Yeah, no, this is a tricky one, but I would definitely say just follow up again. And then if this is obviously follow up with the financial support office or whomever's in charge, like literally email everyone, I'm not even kidding, about the same thing, see who if someone replies, but then also you probably have some program directors that you can talk about or like faculty within your program, reach out to them, tell like people that you can trust and that can back you up and tell them the situation and ask them, if they have ways to let you know or contact someone else that might help you because it's coming up soon and you definitely need to know beforehand.
All right. Um, if there are any more questions, please ask now. It looks like we have made it through everything in the Q&A, answering a total of 52 questions. Thank you so much to everyone for being here. Thank you especially to Yanni and Natalie for a great webinar. And I think, this concludes our first Cientifico Latino webinar of uh, 2025, or GSMI webinar of 2025. And everyone have a great night.
Thank you. This was great. Good
Thank
seeing
you.
you guys.